Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Troy Clayton, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Warrant Officer Class 1, Joanne Davey. We warmly welcome the family of Private Robert Henry McColl, whose story will be told shortly. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We also acknowledge the members of the RSL Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching this ceremony broadcast across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Robert Henry McColl. Robert McColl, known as Bob, was born on the 27th of December 1886, the fourth son of Hugh and Hannah McColl of Wilmington, South Australia. Bob's father had been born in Scotland and came to South Australia as a colonist in the 1870s, taking up farming and grazing. Bob was educated at the nearby Pindar School and was described as very popular with all who knew him. Bob followed in his father's footsteps by becoming a farmer, moving to New South Wales in 1912 to take up share farming at Greenthorpe. He had seen just enough success to consider striking out on his own when he enlisted to serve in the war. Bob McColl enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force 2 years after the war began, going into military camp in August 1916 to begin his training. In October, he left Australia for active service overseas with reinforcements to the 56th Battalion. McColl was first sent to England, where he continued training on Salisbury Plain for the winter and was sent to fight on the battlefields of the Western Front in March 1917. During this time, he was transferred to the 20th Battalion. Private McColl finally reached the 20th Battalion, where it was situated in the newly captured town of Bar Pom on the 23rd of March 1917. During this time, the German opposite the Australian lines had been quietly withdrawing to a strongly prepared defensive position known as the Hindenburg Line. The Australians had been advancing behind, engaging the enemy where possible. 2 days after McColl joined, the 20th Battalion began to move, ending up behind the lines training in preparation for a new attack. On the 11th of April, as the first Battle of Bullecourt began, the men had the chance to have a shower and then marched out of camp bound for the battlefield. By the 14th of April, the 20th Battalion was in reserve at Vauvecourt, a few kilometres from the town of Bullecourt. At 4:30 a.m. on the 15th of April, headquarters of the 20th Battalion received the orders to stand to, as the Germans had broken through the line. In heavy, constant rain, the men advanced and engaged the enemy, struggling to re-establish a continuous line. The 20th Battalion's war diary records that, despite the bad weather, the operations were very brilliantly carried out, and the battalion suffered very lightly in the way of casualties. In an operation that had captured some 200 prisoners and a German machine gun, the 20th Battalion had had 16 men wounded and 6 men killed. One of the men killed on the 15th of April 1917 was Private Bob McColl. Little is known of the manner of his death, nor was his body recovered from the battlefield. Today, he is commemorated on the Australian National Memorial of Villers-Bretonneux, among the names of more than 10,000 other Australians killed on the Somme who have no known grave. He had been with his battalion on the battlefield for 23 days. In Greenthorpe, New South Wales, a memorial service was held for Bob McColl at the local Methodist church. In his address to the congregation, the minister could find no words to speak highly enough of the one from their church who had given his life for his friends. He prayed that an example such as Bob McColl's life, pure, upright and God-fearing, would speak to them individually. The minister concluded by expressing his pleasure at seeing such a splendid gathering of people to do honour to one so much beloved by all who had known him. In South Australia, Bob McColl was remembered by those who knew and loved him. The McColl family put a memorial notice in the newspaper which concluded with the words, "He did his bit." Bob McColl was 30 years old when he died. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, amongst almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Robert Henry McColl, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We'll remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub of Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director and staff, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and for your continued support of the Memorial's Development Project. And we wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.